What's going on, guys? It's been a little while. Travis Fowler Arkwriter back here with the newly revamped Four Corner podcast. And the reason I ever did this revamp is because podcasting is so much more fun because you get to talk about stuff that you want to do or things that you want to have a main focus on without really a whole lot of worries about time constraints or anything like that. And for me, I love just talking about professional wrestling. So for me, this was an easier route to do because if I can just get on here on somewhat of a week-to-week basis and just get all the BS of what's going on in professional wrestling out of my head, then it is much more entertaining for me to watch. Plus, it gives me an opportunity to share my opinions with all of you that are also pro wrestling fans, and then we get to have a dialogue as to what we think might be a little too far-fetched, or maybe what we think could be better, or anything like that, because even though I know the IWC can be pretty critical of everything that we watch in professional wrestling these days, I love being able to just bounce ideas off of each other because it is so much fun just to talk about this one thing that we all love and are passionate about, and that's professional wrestling. So let's have this debut episode of the Four Corner podcast kick off with the fallout from the Royal Rumble, because last night was the Royal Rumble as I'm recording this, and I gotta tell you, for the overall of the show, if you're looking for more wrestling in your professional wrestling, this probably would not be a show that you could either go back and rewatch, nor would you want to watch, really. Because something I noticed about the show on a second thought, if you will, was that this was very much a sports entertainment heavy show, meaning the wrestling wasn't supposed to be the focal point. The wrestling was the backdrop to the stories that you were going to see unfold. And honestly, while that's not everybody's cup of tea, that's pretty much what I grew up with. And I think the majority of us, especially if you were in the 80s or the 90s, that's pretty much what your flavor of wrestling is, and that's what we like most. So I honestly think if you are that type of wrestling fan, last night's show was amazing for you because you got your sports entertainment with your physical wrestling. And there was a total of 5 matches. You had 2 Rumble matches and then 3 singles matches, which I think is more than enough for a sustainable card. And it was. It did run about the 4-hour length, a little bit over with everything that happened after the main event match. But overall, it really was a well-paced show. And I'm going to talk about each individual match as part of this fallout and then give my thoughts about where things are going forward. All in all, there were 5 matches, and in all, it was a really fun, just entertaining show. So let's not waste any more time. Let's talk about the implications that come after each match as well as the matches themselves. Last night started off with the Royal Rumble match on the men's side of things. And first off, as I've seen multiple times throughout today, you really got to give it to Gunther in this one. Gunter, however you pronounce it. I believe it's supposed to be pronounced as Gunter, which I'm okay with. That man deserves a world of kudos as he has now set the record for the longest time in a single Rumble match. I believe the amount was 71 minutes and 25 seconds. So that'd be 1 hour, 11 minutes, 25 seconds. And he went from number 1 all the way to the final 2. And that was amazing in and of itself. Another fun kudo that they talked about during commentary last night was how number 1 and number 30 have never actually been the final 2 in any Royal Rumble before. So it was the first time for that to ever happen, and it was Cody Rhodes and Gunther's the final 2, which I think was an amazing final 2, and actually kind of gives us an idea of what we can maybe expect going forward at some point in the future. I think that would be a fun match. Gunther, I guess the European or the overseas guy, if you will, the big, strong, strapping guy against the American Nightmare, it kind of makes for a fun, entertaining feud. So we'll see how that may progress down the line. And we all pretty much knew, if you were an IWC type of person, then you pretty much knew that Cody Rhodes was going to come back and win the men's Royal Rumble, which he did. And I wanted that to happen. I know a lot of people thought at the last it would be Sami Zayn, but we'll talk about the Sami Zayn stuff because obviously that took a huge focal point of the entire show, as it should, being the lead show feud, if you will. and it deserved every bit of spotlight that it got last night. And the payoff that we're going to have at the end of it, I think, is going to be extremely amazing. But how does Cody fit into that? I'll talk about that once we get to the end as well, when I tell you about what I personally would like to see going forward. So after we had the men's Royal Rumble match, we went into the Mountain Dew Pitch Black match. And I gotta say, I was not really looking forward to the match at all. We didn't know what it was. You know, a part of me thought, like, literally they were going to turn at least the house lights off, like turn off all their lights, and then basically you would have people with their phones and their LED lights basically illuminate the match, which I feel like could be a possibility for a pitch black match. You just have to work off that. And I think that's something that could have been done, and it would have actually been more entertaining to a degree. I actually did kind of like the black light, UV light, whatever you want to call it. I actually kind of enjoyed that. I thought it made for a nice aesthetic, honestly. It was pretty entertaining as a match concept. The execution maybe had a little bit to be desired, but for this Bray Wyatt character that we have right now, I think it fits. There's still a lot of questions with the Bray Wyatt thing, which, me personally, I've been enjoying the feud. I like the twists and turns that we've had, but I am curious to see exactly where this is going, because there's still a lot of what ifs and questions as to exactly what's going to happen going forward. Only time will tell, and I'm willing to give this thing time. I've been a Bray Wyatt fan for many years, even all the way back to his NXT run, where we saw the Eater of Worlds gimmick first off. So I really have a lot of high hopes for the Wyatt character from here all the way to Mania and beyond. After that, we had the women's title match, which it was a very story-driven match. And that kind of leads into what I was saying earlier about how the pay-per-view event, or the premium live event, the PLE last night, is very much a sports entertainment-centered pay-per-view. It's not about the wrestling necessarily. It's all about the stories that were told and the ones that either were ending or continuing. This is one of the ones that we obviously had to build for several weeks with Alexa and Bianca, with Alexa having the, how do we put this? The almost exorcism situation with Uncle Howdy is, I guess, the only way to put that. And I enjoy it. I enjoy the whole Wyatt Six story, if that's what you want to call it, or just in general, the Uncle Howdy story. I've been enjoying it. I love that they're corrupting Alexa, because eventually we're going to have an interaction with Bray and Alexa, which I know a lot of people really want that to happen, because we all know how that ended, and we didn't want it to end that way. We wanted to see where it was going to progress, and we got robbed of that. So we'll see what goes on moving forward from this matchup. Nothing really special, though, to wow home about. It was Bianca picking up the win. I kind of figured she would, being this close to Mania. I think she's going to ride it out all the way and be a one-year champion, which has been great. She's had a great year, a great champion overall. So I'm really hoping that leads towards what our next match is kind of implicating, which was the Women's Royal Rumble, which at the beginning it was hard to get into. It was just, I don't know if I would catch slack for saying this, but the women's Rumble matches haven't been the best to watch. At times they've been a little painful, to be honest. That said, I believe that's how the women's Rumble started last night, and then progressively got better as time went on. With each entrant coming, for me, I think is when Asuka came out. That's when everything seemed to step up their game. By the way, while I'm thinking about it, somebody that I still would really like to see get somewhat of a push or an opportunity, Xia Li. I enjoy Xia Li's work, and it really, to me, is baffling that she actually hasn't had a shot yet on the main roster. I think she's a gorgeous woman. I think she's got great athletic ability. The martial arts background really helps with her. I haven't quite understood why there hasn't been something for her, but hopefully something down the line, maybe even potentially something between her and Asuka, I think could be really fun. This new incarnation of Asuka was amazing to see. I say new because for WWE fans, it's pretty new. If you followed her career, though, in Japan, before she got to WWE, she actually had somewhat of an alter ego like gimmick. So it's cool to see that being brought over as part of the Asuka character, as an extension of the Asuka character. That was really cool. And it just got better and better from that point forward. Michelle McCool was a fun entrant, actually. The only thing that I really did not like about it, because I don't know who was honestly hoping to see her back, and that may be harsh, but Nia Jax is back in WWE. So, there you go. I wish the best for her. I don't know. I just never really bought her as a wrestler. It just never clicked for me. I know some people feel opposite, and that's fine. This is all of just one man's opinion. So I can't fault you for that, and I can't fault anybody for how they're feeling when it's literally something like professional wrestling. So maybe this run will be better. Only time will tell. But I do believe the right woman won. I really didn't have a pick going into the weekend, and it wasn't really until SmackDown that I actually thought of who I wanted to win. And I honestly went with her, and I was shocked that she started out the Rumble. It worried me, but I'm glad she did, as she now is the one of 4 people to start at number 1 and go the distance. Rhea Ripley is deserving of that Royal Rumble win, and I do believe they're going to lead towards Rhea and Bianca for WrestleMania, which I am here all day for that matchup. By the way, something that I had mentioned earlier in the men's Rumble as well, there were some continuations of stories that were built into the Rumble as well, which is typically what you want. That's part of what makes a Rumble so fun, is the variety of storytelling that you get. As we saw, the Judgment Day storyline between Dominic and his father Ray continued with, it was an injury situation, but it worked out great, honestly, for storytelling purposes, as Rey Mysterio was, I believe, number 17 or 18, and Dominic was the entry right after. So Dom comes out with the mask, makes it look like, hey, I had something to do with Ray not making it into the Rumble, which I thought was great because it's just helping build for their eventual match that I believe is looking like WrestleMania as well. So overall, for all intents and purposes, like I said, the stories that were told in the men's Rumble, the women's Rumble had some as well. Everything was story heavy last night. And story heavy doesn't even begin to express how great the main event was. From an in-ring standpoint, Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens put on a fantastic match for what needed to be done. They had the crowd hooked, and they were with it for the entire matchup. Obviously, the Sammy factor was a big part of that, but you still need capable performers to pull off great performances when they matter. And Owens and Reigns did just that. The Sammy storyline backdrop was just that much better. That was the cherry on top of a cake. It worried me when we saw the missed spot by Owens that I thought the fans would potentially turn on it. But one thing that I saw that reminded me back when I was a little teenager and adolescent watching wrestling back in the early 2000s, one thing that I admired about the guys at that point, and even still today you see people do it, is if there's a mess up like that, they try to redo the spot in a different fashion and not make it look so out of place, which I think really goes to a lot of people not really hating on the situation that happened. They're a little bit more understanding, and actually they appreciate that you do something to kind of, I think, I won't say replace it, but make up for what was just missed. On top of that, we've seen Kevin Owens hit what he did before anyway. So it's not like we don't know he can do it. It just was a slip up, and it's no big deal. And I'm so glad that they didn't let that ruin the matchup. They, meaning the fans, didn't let that ruin the matchup, because it was a good match regardless. But the story, I gotta say, I did not expect the Sammy turn last night. I thought that would happen actually this week on SmackDown, and I'm actually really surprised that that didn't happen, but in the best way, because the reaction that got That's why you love professional wrestling so much. Literally, it could not have been any better than what you saw. Um, I've talked about with a couple people where I think this story is going, and I'll get to that in a minute. But the breakdown of that entire after segment of the main event, really, I don't think you could do anything better. I don't think the storytelling would be any better than what you saw executed last night. And it was absolutely 100% amazing. Um, from the aftermatch beatdown to Kevin Owens, to the point where Sammy started really questioning if he wanted to be associated with the group anymore, to the point where Roman was not going to be the one to end it for Kevin. He was going to make Sammy really show his loyalty. The little subtle things like him talking to Sammy, saying that he can keep going doing jackass stuff if he didn't go through with this, like chef's kiss. And this was just amazing to see Roman then get so frustrated with Sammy, shoving him in the face, really set Sammy off, which led to the chair shot that harkens back to Seth Rollins' betrayal of the Shield on Roman with that chair shot for shot. And man alive, did it work, because that crowd was unglued. Like, that pop was so loud, it actually like jammed up my speakers when that took place. I could not believe that, almost in unison, perfect unison. I would describe it very much like the Daniel Bryan run in 2014 when it comes to the crowd reaction, specifically on the cage spot on the Raw before the Rumble of that year, when Daniel Bryan had just taken out the Wyatt family and he had Bray set up to do the flying knee, and in unison he had the crowd doing the yes chant at the speed that he wanted, and they went with it. That's how that crowd felt last night when they all just went, yeah, for Sammy doing the chair shot to Roman. That's how it was. Amazing. And then the follow-up with the beatdown on Sammy, to the point where, of all things, Jey Uso walked away, which I did not see coming. And that one little action there is actually what makes this so great, because you can go in so many directions with that one simple finish. And I'll tell you where I hope it goes, as well as maybe add in where I wouldn't mind seeing certain things take place. But it was all done perfectly. And then the Roman situation at the end, where Roman Reigns got legit heat last night as he stood there and the FU Roman chants started. Perfection. He played the role and he went with it. And I don't even know if he expected it to get that rowdy, but it did. And I'm so glad it did, because it looked so amazing. And that's why we love professional wrestling so much, is for those moments that literally grabbed us psychologically and hooked us in to where we need to see how this ends. How does this continue forward? What is going to happen next? That's what we love most. Now, where would I like to see this storyline goes, and how does Cody fit into it? Here's an idea of what I have thought was going to happen for months now. I told you I had actually spoken with a friend of mine about this stuff so many different times, and each time I still have the exact same feeling, which is no different than what I thought beforehand. And I love it. I really think it could work because it's logical and it goes with the pace of the story. And now it throws Cody into it, which I think can fit perfectly. So this is how I see and would want things moving forward. And only time will tell if it goes this route. So this week, we're going to see the build start for Elimination Chamber, which for the Chamber, I'm going to say right now, the main event in Montreal will be Sami Zayn versus Roman Reigns, I believe, in some form or fashion, okay? This is the way I would want to see it done. this week, we see the fallout from this. Sami versus Roman is booked for the Chamber. That may not be this week, but that's what we're going to have leading up to for Elimination Chamber. And where does Jey Uso fit in all this? I'm just going to tell y'all now, spoiler ahead, Jey Uso doesn't leave the Bloodline, but he questions where things are going when it comes to the Bloodline. Jey was the first one who was indoctrinated into this Roman regime, if you will. Roman's reign really started by breaking down Jey Uso to be what we now know as main event Jey Uso. So that, along with the fact that he saw through Sami for so long, to the point where he tried to tell his family that he didn't trust this guy, and they didn't believe him, even when he saw it, and they just kind of brushed it off. Well, they did it so many times, and Sami proved his loyalty so many times that it eventually broke Jey down to the point where he accepted Sami, and we saw how that played out with the Survivor Series War Games ending, along with the tribal court that took place last week. Leading up to the Chamber, Jey's going to really start feeling conflicted in some way because of how everything played out at the Rumble. And then along with the fact that, like I said, he tried to convince his family that Sami was going to be a turncoat all along, and he was proven right. So I really do feel like that is a perfect ingredient moving forward, is what's the Jey Uso factor going to be. But nevertheless, KO is going to be supporting Sami. And this is all going to lead towards the Chamber, and Cody gets involved right now because Cody saw what happened to Sami and to KO, and he doesn't want them to feel like it's always going to be on them. Put him involved with them now. That way, with the route I want to go, Sami versus Reigns will have Jimmy and Jey on the outside protecting Roman, where you have Kevin and Cody outside for Sami watching his back. Or if you don't want to do the one-on-one for the WWE Universal Undisputed title with Sami and Roman, have the first ever 6-man elimination chamber match, 6-man tag elimination chamber match, with the Bloodline represented by Roman Reigns and the Usos against Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, and Cody Rhodes. Elimination Chamber rules apply until all 3 members of one team have been eliminated. Easy concept that still goes great with the Chamber. But we're going to stick with my one-on-one of Zayn versus Reigns. And in that match, that's when Roman convinces Jey that he needs to stick with the Bloodline. Maybe to a reluctant stance, maybe he goes with it. And that could potentially set up for, if The Rock is able to do that, which I can explain that here in a second. But there's where Jey ultimately comes back to the Bloodline. And obviously Reigns picks up the win. But now you've given Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns more stake in this matchup, as opposed to them not even factoring in Cody until a month out before Mania, until right after Chamber. Do you start implementing Cody? No, do that now. Because then you've got him in a 2-month-long feud to back up Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, plus he's building his own feud with Roman, which now is going to get more personal because you've got the handpicked chosen one by WWE back when the Shield broke up to be the guy against the man that they never wanted to be anywhere near the guy, which that has the story in and of itself. He says it himself, from undesirable to undeniable. The story is there. You put him in the mix right now with Sami and Kevin, and that gives all that much more importance to their title match at WrestleMania. And that also will set up, at the end of Chamber, the Usos versus KO and Sami Zayn for the tag team championships. Now, if The Rock is factored in here, let's say he's the one that shows up at Chamber, because he could show up a month before WrestleMania and it'll still sell and it still works, because then you can have Rock coming in to be like the angel, if you will, for Jey Uso on his shoulder. It would work out perfect where he could start playing into that, which is where you start seeing the cracks of the bloodline really start showing through on Reigns' grip. And that can lead towards Brock versus Roman having the personal stake also when it comes to the bloodline, like who really is the head of the table of the bloodline. It still could work if The Rock is able to do it. So we'll see how that plays out. But that's what I personally would love to see take place. I've seen other people say that they want Jey to kind of be the one that turns before Chamber, or just in general is the turncoat, whatever you want to go with, that sides with Sami and Kevin to take on Jimmy, Solo, and Roman at Chamber, or at least at some point, I want to say. That could work. And maybe it's because it's my idea. Maybe I'm a little too biased towards it. But I think my version of doing it makes more sense, and it gets Cody in the mix a lot sooner, and it helps build towards Cody and Roman a lot easier. But that's my 2 cents to it. I love talking wrestling with everybody, and I hope you enjoyed this first rebirth episode of now the Four Corner Podcast. I also want to say thank you to Anchor Podcast for making this possible. If you haven't heard of them, Anchor Podcast is a great way to start off your podcast, literally from start to finish, even at a novice level. It's so much fun and easy. It gets uploaded to Spotify along with all of your other podcast streaming network services. It's right there for you, and it's simple and easy to do. So if you haven't already, check out Anchor Podcast if you yourself want to start podcasting today. Other than that, I'm again going to try to do this every week and talk wrestling with you guys, because I love wrestling. We all love wrestling. And I'm going to sign off with the one simple phrase: love wrestling. Catch y'all next week.